June 27, 1944. The ruins of Cherbourg, France. The air is thick with the ghosts of battle. It smells of damp, pulverized stone, of cordite, and of the sea. For 19-year-old Annelies Vogt, a former signals auxiliary, a Nachrichtenhelferin, the world has shrunk to the scuffed toes of her boots and the rhythm of her own ragged breathing. The constant thunder of the American naval bombardment that had shaken the very marrow in her bones for days has finally ceased. In its place is a more terrifying sound, the low, guttural rumble of Sherman Kenck engines and the clipped, foreign cadence of English. She huddles with 24 other women in the cavernous, shell-pocked cellar of what was once the harbor commandant's office. They are a collection of Germany's female auxiliaries, the so-called gray mice of the Wehrmacht. There is Ursula, a stout Flakhelferin from Hamburg, her face still smudged with soot from a 20mm anti-aircraft gun, her knuckles white as she clutches a useless ration tin. There is 17-year-old Elke, a clerk from the quartermaster's office, whose tears have carved clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. They had been told to fight to the last, that capture meant a fate worse than death. The propaganda films had shown them, in stark, terrifying detail, what the American barbarians did to German women. Stories whispered in the bunkers, fueled by official bulletins from the Führer's headquarters, painted a picture of unimaginable torment. Now, the stories are all they have left. A heavy boot scrapes on the stone steps above. A shadow falls across the opening. The women flinch as one, a collective intake of breath. 2 soldiers from the U.S. 9th Infantry Division appear, their M1 Garand rifles held loosely, almost casually. They are impossibly young, their faces smudged with dirt and exhaustion. One of them, a corporal with tired eyes, scans the group of terrified women. He says something to his partner, a phrase too quick and nasal for Annelies to decipher. There is no demonic leer, no sadistic glint in his eye. There is only a weary professionalism. He gestures with his rifle. Raus! Out! Schnell! The word is German, but it sounds alien in his mouth. One by one, the women rise, pulling their thin coats tight around themselves despite the summer air. They climb the stairs and emerge into a world of rubble. The sky is a flat, indifferent gray. Cherbourg, the vital port they had been ordered to hold at all costs, is a skeletal ruin. The ground is a carpet of shattered glass, twisted steel, and discarded equipment. The scale of the destruction is absolute. This is what defeat looks like. It is what it smells like. They are marched through the streets, a ragged column of gray uniforms amidst the American olive drab. GIs stop and stare. Some whistle, some just watch with a kind of detached curiosity. There is none of the snarling hatred Annelies had been conditioned to expect. The real horror is quieter, more mundane. It is the methodical way they are searched by a female MP, her hands firm but not cruel. It is the way their names are recorded in a ledger, reducing their identities to a line of ink. Annelies Vogt, Ursula Richten, Elke Schmidt. They are no longer auxiliaries of the Third Reich. They are prisoners of war, numbers on a list. The processing takes hours. They are given hard biscuits and tins of a strange, salty meat. Ursula, the defiant flak gunner, spits hers out at first, then, driven by a hunger that overrides pride, scoops it up from the dirt and eats it. The day bleeds into a damp, chilly evening. Finally, they are marched again, this time towards the harbor. The rhythmic slap of waves against the stone quays grows louder, and then they see it. Looming out of the twilight mist, a vessel of impossible size, its gray flanks scarred by the sea. It is an American transport ship, the SS Edmund B. Alexander. It is the ship that will carry them away from everything they have ever known. As they are herded toward the gangplank, a cold dread, deeper than any fear she felt during the bombardments, settles into Annelies' stomach. The propaganda films, the whispered warnings, they all centered on this moment. the voyage. The long, dark crossing where anything could happen, where no one would hear their screams. The gangplank sways sickeningly under their feet. It is a narrow bridge between two worlds, the shattered continent of Europe behind them and an unknown, terrifying future ahead. The sheer metal wall of the ship rises like a cliff face, blotting out the last of the evening sky. The SS Edmund B Alexander groans around them, a living creature of steel and steam, its breath the smell of diesel fuel and brine. For the German women, it feels like being swallowed whole. American sailors, lean and sun-darkened, direct the shuffling column with curt gestures and sharp, unintelligible commands. Their faces are impassive, their movements efficient. They are handlers, moving human cargo. Annalise keeps her eyes down, focused on the worn heels of the woman in front of her. To look up is to see the scale of her own helplessness. She can feel the vibration of the ship's engines through the soles of her shoes, a deep, resonant hum that seems to emanate from the center of the earth. The women are guided down a series of steep metal ladders, their footsteps clanging in the echoing confines of the ship's interior. The air grows warmer, heavier, thick with the smell of paint, hot metal, and unwashed bodies. They descend deeper and deeper into the vessel, past watertight doors and bundles of thick cables, into a part of the ship that feels far from the open air and the light of day. They are finally halted in a wide, low-ceilinged compartment. Rows of steel-framed bunks, stacked 3 high, fill the space. There are perhaps 100 of them in this section, a sea of gray uniforms and pale, frightened faces. For a moment, they simply stand there, a bewildered herd, clutching their small bundles of personal effects. This, they think, is the cage. The rumors begin to circulate again, whispered from bunk to bunk in hushed German. They are in the hold, below the waterline. If the ship is torpedoed by one of their own U-boats, they will be the first to drown, trapped like rats. Others murmur about the guards, about what will happen when the lights go out. Elke, the young clerk, begins to sob quietly, her shoulders shaking. Ursula, ever the pragmatist, finds a lower bunk and sits down heavily, her face a mask of grim resignation. Annalise finds an empty middle bunk and hoists herself onto it. The mattress is a thin canvas pad, but it is a place to be, a small territory in this overwhelming space. She lies on her back, staring at the network of pipes and conduits on the ceiling just inches from her face. She can hear everything: the ceaseless thrum of the engines, the distant shouts of the crew, the creak and groan of the ship's hull protesting against the sea, and the soft, collective murmur of fear from the women around her. This is the moment she has been trained to dread. Gubbel's voice, crackling from the Volksempfänger radio, had been so certain, so convincing. He had spoken of the Jewish Bolshevik beasts from the east and the gangster capitalists from the west, united in their desire to defile and destroy the German race. The Americans, he had promised, were a mongrel nation, devoid of culture and honor, who would treat their captives with unparalleled cruelty. A loud clang echoes through the compartment as a heavy steel door is slammed shut and bolted from the outside. The sound is final. The sobbing from Elke's bunk becomes more pronounced. Several other women join in, a chorus of despair in the dim yellow light. Annalise closes her eyes, her heart pounding against her ribs. She feels a sudden, powerful lurch as the ship's giant propellers bite into the water. The vibration beneath her intensifies. They are moving. Slowly, irrevocably, the SS Edmund B. Alexander is pulling away from the coast of France. Annalise presses her face into the rough canvas of the mattress, trying to block out the sounds of weeping. She is leaving her homeland behind, a prisoner in the belly of an animal ship sailing toward a fate that propaganda has promised will be a living hell. The first night has begun. Hours bleed into one another in the stuffy, vibrating darkness of the hold. The rhythmic pulse of the engines is a constant, inescapable heartbeat. For the women, it is the soundtrack to their terror. They lie in their bunks, fully clothed, listening. Every footstep in the passageway outside, every clang of metal on metal sends a fresh spike of adrenaline through them. They are waiting for the monsters to appear. They whisper to each other in the gloom, their voices tight with fear. The stories they have been told, the horrific images planted in their minds by years of relentless indoctrination, now play out in the theater of their imagination. They expect brutality. They expect humiliation. They expect the absolute worst that men can do to women. Annalise lies perfectly still, her muscles knotted with tension. The slow, deep roll of the Atlantic has begun, a nauseating cradle rocking that turns her stomach. The air is growing stale, thick with the scent of fierce sweat and impending seasickness. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the murmuring, the unmistakable scrape of the bolt being drawn back on the compartment door. A collective silence falls. Every woman holds her breath. The door swings inward with a loud groan. Two figures are silhouetted in the brighter light of the passageway. They are American guards. One is a tall, lanky private who looks no older than Elka. The other is a stocky sergeant with a square jaw. The women shrink back into the shadows of their bunks. This is it. Ursula sits bolt upright, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, ready for a fight she knows she cannot win. The sergeant steps inside, his eyes scanning the terrified faces staring back at him. He says nothing for a long moment. Then he turns to the private and speaks in a low voice. The private nods and disappears back into the corridor. The sergeant remains, his presence filling the compartment. He doesn't move towards them. He simply stands by the door, his rifle held at a casual port arms. The silence stretches, thick and suffocating. Annalise can hear her own blood pounding in her ears. Then, the young private returns. He is not alone. Behind him are two other soldiers, and they are not carrying weapons. They are carrying stacks of rough, gray wool blankets. They begin to move down the narrow aisle between the bunks, placing a folded blanket at the foot of each one. They move with a quiet efficiency, their faces betraying nothing more than a mild boredom, as if they were distributing laundry. The women watch, stunned into disbelief. They don't take the blankets. They just stare at them. This is not the cruelty they were promised. It is a confusing, unsettling act of simple provision. Before they can process this, the private returns again, this time pushing a small-wheeled trolley. On it are two large, steaming metal urns and stacks of thick, white ceramic mugs. An overpowering, sweet and fragrant aroma fills the stale air. It is the smell of hot tea. The soldier starts at the first bunk, pouring the dark, steaming liquid into a mug and placing it on the floor. He moves to the next and the next. No words are spoken. It is a silent, almost reverent ritual. When he reaches Annalise's bunk, he looks up, and for a second their eyes meet. He is just a boy. A farm boy from Ohio or Iowa, perhaps, with freckles spattered across his nose and a look of profound weariness in his eyes. He looks just as scared and out of his depth as she feels. He pours the tea and places the mug on the floor beside her. The warmth radiates up from it. Annalise slowly, hesitantly reaches down. Her fingers, cold and trembling, wrap around the hot ceramic. The simple, solid feel of it is a shock to her system. She brings the mug to her lips. The tea is sweet, laced with milk. It is a taste of civilization, of comfort, of a normality she thought had been extinguished forever. She looks around the compartment. Other women are doing the same. They are sitting up, holding the mugs in both hands as if for warmth, their faces illuminated by the dim light. They look at each other over the rims of their cups. No one speaks. But in that shared, silent moment, a profound and seismic shift is occurring. It is a quiet, devastating realization that crashes over them with more force than any Atlantic wave. In this small, unexpected act of kindness, a warm blanket and a cup of sweet tea, the entire edifice of Nazi propaganda, the carefully constructed universe of hatred and fear in which they have lived their entire adult lives, has just been proven to be a lie. They had been lied to. The voyage across the Atlantic becomes a strange, disorienting limbo. The days fall into a routine that is both monotonous and deeply unsettling to the German women. The initial terror of the first night has receded, replaced by a pervasive, gnawing confusion. The world as they knew it has been upended, not by violence, but by its very absence. They are fed 3 times a day. The food is simple but plentiful: stew, bread, coffee, a far cry from the meager ersatz rations they had subsisted on for months in besieged Cherbourg. A U.S. Army doctor, a mild-mannered man with spectacles, makes daily rounds, dispensing aspirin and tending to the seasick with a gentle, professional air. The guards change shifts with predictable regularity. They are not the leering sadists of the newsreels. They are, for the most part, young men, bored and homesick, who perform their duties with a detached indifference. They rarely speak to the prisoners, but the women watch them constantly. They see them sharing cigarettes, laughing at a joke, reading letters from home with furrowed brows. They witness small, mundane moments of humanity that collectively dismantle the caricature of the American beast. You cannot hate an enemy who looks so much like your own brother, your own cousin. For Anneliese, the journey is an internal one. The vast, empty expanse of the ocean outside mirrors the new emptiness within her. The certainties that had been the bedrock of her existence, the righteousness of the German cause, the divine wisdom of the Führer, the inherent evil of the enemy, have all crumbled. She spends hours on her bunk, the gentle roll of the ship a constant companion, replaying the last few years in her mind. She remembers the rallies, the torchlight parades, the powerful, intoxicating feeling of being part of something immense and historic. She remembers the radio broadcasts, the posters, the school lessons, all reinforcing a single monolithic truth. Now, that truth feels like a fragile sheet of ice that has shattered, plunging her into the cold, dark water of doubt. Discussions and arguments ripple through the compartment. Ursula, the hardened Flakhelferin, remains defiant. "It's a trick," she hisses one afternoon, her voice low and fierce. "A trick to make us weak, to make us talk. Don't trust any of it. They are clever, these Americans. They use comfort as a weapon." Some of the other women nod in agreement, clinging to the familiar narrative of suspicion. It is easier to believe in a complex deception than to accept a simple, world-altering truth. But others are not so sure. Elke, the young clerk, seems to be healing. The kindness has pierced through her fear. "They gave me medicine for my stomach," she says quietly, looking at her hands. "The doctor was nice. He asked me my name." This simple statement hangs in the air, a testament to an experience that cannot be reconciled with their indoctrination. Anneliese listens to it all, feeling adrift between the two camps. She watches the American sailors swabbing the decks when the women are occasionally allowed up for air in a small, caged-off section of the fantail. The sky is immense, a brilliant, crystalline blue she had forgotten existed. The sea is a hypnotic, churning wilderness of white-capped waves stretching to an infinite horizon. There is no land in sight, no Germany, no Europe. They are utterly disconnected from their past. One sailor, noticing her watching, offers a brief, shy smile before being barked at by a superior and turning back to his work. That smile, so casual and uncalculated, does more to deconstruct Anneliese's worldview than any lecture or interrogation ever could. It is a human gesture, offered freely, across the divide of uniforms and languages. After 9 days at sea, a change is felt in the ship's rhythm. The engines slow, and a new sound reaches them, the distant cry of gulls. A buzz of anticipation and renewed anxiety runs through the prisoners. Land. The word is whispered from bunk to bunk. The guards seem more alert, more purposeful. The long, suspended period of transit is ending. A new chapter of their captivity is about to begin. The final lie they must confront is the one about America itself, the decadent, racially impure, crumbling nation they were taught to despise. As the SS Edmund B. Alexander glides into the calmer waters of a coastal approach, the women prepare to face the reality of the new world. Dawn, early July 1944, the port of New York. The women are herded from the stale air of the hold up to the main deck. They squint in the bright, hazy morning light, their eyes accustomed to the dim yellow glow of the ship's interior. The air is cool and damp, carrying a new scent, not just of sea salt, but of earth, industry, and exhaust fumes. And then they see it. Annalise feels a gasp catch in her throat, a sound echoed by dozens of the women around her. Before them, rising out of the morning mist like a mythical city from a Wagnerian opera, is the skyline of Manhattan. It is a sight for which nothing could have prepared them. The sheer verticality of it, the impossible forest of skyscrapers piercing the clouds, is staggering. It is a landscape of immense power and wealth. The propaganda films had shown them American cities, but they had been depicted as squalid, chaotic slums, rife with poverty and decay, a testament to the failure of capitalism. What stands before them is not decay. It is a profound and arrogant statement of strength. It is bigger, grander, and more modern than anything in Berlin or Hamburg. The scale of it is simply incomprehensible. As the SS Edmund B. Alexander is nudged into its berth by powerful tugboats, the women see more. They see a harbor teeming with an endless parade of ships, freighters, warships, ferries, a display of logistical might that makes a mockery of Germany's choked and blockaded ports. They see cars, thousands of them, moving in orderly streams along the distant highways. The sheer abundance is an assault on their senses. This is not a nation on the verge of collapse. This is a nation that has barely begun to fight. Ursula stands ramrod straight beside Annalise, her face pale, her lips a thin, tight line. She says nothing, but Annalise can see the rigid denial in her posture warring with the undeniable truth before her eyes. Elke is weeping again, but these are not the tears of fear from the cellar in Cherbourg. They are tears of overwhelming confusion and a dawning, terrible understanding of the scale of the Reich's delusion. Their journey is not over. They are disembarked, their feet touching American soil with a sense of profound unreality. They are marched onto a waiting train, the windows blacked out to prevent them from seeing too much of the country they are now in. But they can still hear it, the sounds of a nation at war, yet a nation untouched by war's physical devastation. They hear the whistles of other trains, the sound of children playing, the distant melody of a popular song from a radio. Their final destination is a processing center, likely Fort Hunt in Virginia, a place once used to interrogate high-value prisoners. But for these women, the process is bureaucratic, not brutal. They are medically examined, deloused, issued new clothing, simple, functional dresses to replace their worn Wehrmacht uniforms. They are photographed and fingerprinted. Throughout the entire process, they are treated with an impersonal efficiency that is somehow more disarming than kindness. They are being processed by a system, a vast, well-oiled machine that is confident of its purpose and its ultimate victory. In the evening, in a clean but sparse barracks, Annalise sits on her cot. She holds a letter she has been allowed to write, a simple postcard that will be sent through the Red Cross to her family, assuring them that she is alive and being treated correctly. How can she possibly explain the truth of her situation? How can she describe the view of Manhattan, the taste of sweet tea, the shy smile of a young sailor? How can she articulate the vertigo of having one's entire reality inverted? The phrase that repeats in her mind, a silent, damning mantra, is the only truth she has left. Wir sind belogen worden. We have been lied to. It was not just a single lie, but a universe of them. A lie about their enemies, a lie about their own strength, a lie about the very nature of the world. And standing here, on the soil of a country she was taught to hate, she understands that the war is not the only thing she has lost. She has lost her certainty, her identity, her past. All that remains is a vast and terrifying future, and the crushing weight of a truth she never sought.